Welcome back to State of the Union. I'm Jake Tapper. The investigations into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election continue unabated, and Special Counsel Robert Mueller is making it clear that President Trump's actions this year are part of the scope of his inquiry, including the president's alleged request of then FBI Director James Comey to lay off General Michael Flynn regarding the Russia investigation and the president's subsequent firing of Comey. Former U.S. Attorney Preet now says he believes President Trump would have asked him to do something inappropriate if he had not been fired. Barara was let go in March, along with 45 other U.S. attorneys appointed by President Obama. While not unusual for presidents to ask holdover attorneys to go, the move was shocking to Barara and observers. Barara had said that the president had personally told him that he wanted him to stay. Barara has since become a vocal critic of the president. He joins us now for his first appearance as a CNN senior legal analyst. Preet Barara, thanks so much for joining us. Good to have you
here.
Thanks for having me. Good to have you as part of the team. So the first question I have for you is you expressed concern that President Trump would have asked you to do something inappropriate. That's a strong charge to make. What exactly do you think he might have asked you to do?
It's not a charge. It's just my belief, from my perspective, based on what happened over time and based on what I've observed, he has said to other people, among other things, as we all know in the public record, and I credit this, he had a private meeting with Jim Comey after he told two other people, including his attorney general, to leave the room and told him essentially to lay off the investigation of Michael Flynn. We now know some weeks later that at one point he talked to his own attorney general, Jeff Sessions, and suggested, is there something we can do to back off on the case against the sheriff in Arizona, Joe Arpaio? Those are two bits of evidence. And then we have, from my own experience, the President of the United States, both as President-elect and then as President, calling me on the phone a number of times, which is unprecedented, unusual. The number of times Barack Obama called me in 7.5 years was 0, to have a chit-chat conversation. I'm not saying it's a certainty, but I'm saying based on what I know and based on the oddity of being called on a repeated basis and based on what happened with these other two gentlemen, Jim Comey and Jeff Sessions, that at some point, I believe he would have asked me to do something inappropriate.
Any ideas of what he might have asked you to do under this hypothetical?
I'm not going to speculate, but there's a lot of things that are swirling around in the world.
So Special Counsel Robert Mueller has requested extensive records and email correspondence from the White House, including records relating to the president's discussions about firing Comey, his response to news that his former national security advisor was under investigation. I am not a lawyer, but I can't think of anything this would mean other than Robert Mueller is at least trying to figure out if there is enough evidence for a charge against the president of obstruction of justice. Am I wrong?
So I am a lawyer, and now I get to play one on TV, so that's great. Look, I think everything you see from our armchair seats suggests that Robert Mueller is going to chase down everything that might suggest a crime has been committed by any associate, colleague, relative of the president, and also the president himself. That does not mean that there will be a referral to the House of Representatives for impeachment. That does not mean there's going to be a charge against anyone, but I think Bob Mueller, based on my knowledge of him, and based on, I think, what his lifetime of service as a prosecutor, as an FBI director indicates, is that he's going to look at everything.
And including obstruction.
I think clearly one of the things he's going to be looking at is obstruction. I think any prosecutor or investigator who sees the evidence that has come forward, including the firing of Jim Comey, including the conversations about how much the president did not like the Russia investigation, including what he said about Michael Flynn, all of that together paints a picture of potential obstruction. And Bob Mueller is a thorough and serious person and fearless, and I think he's got to go there.
So help me out with this part of it. CNN's Pamela Brown reported that as part of the investigation, Mueller interviewed Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein about his role in Trump's firing of Comey. Rosenstein also oversees Mueller. That's obviously because the Attorney General had to recuse himself for other reasons. Do you have any concerns about the person overseeing the investigation also being a witness, potentially, to possible crimes committed that Mueller's looking into? Doesn't that seem like a huge conflict of interest?
It seems odd. You know, there's been a lot of controversy in the mind of the president about Jeff Sessions recusing himself. He said repeatedly that had he known Jeff Sessions was going to recuse himself, he wouldn't have appointed him the Attorney General. But now we have, I think you're right, it's odd and unusual that a person who is putatively overseeing the investigation also is a witness. We also know, for example, and I know Rod, and I think he's a good person. We were colleagues together as U.S. attorneys, but we do know that he had some role in putting forth what I think most people think was a pretextual basis for the firing of Jim Comey, and to the extent that an obstruction investigation relies a little bit on the facts relating to the firing of Jim Comey, it would seem that there's a conflict. What I think people should want to know is whether or not, like Jeff Sessions, the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein has consulted with the top ethics advisors in the department and gotten clearance to continue, and if not, then he shouldn't.
All right, Preet Bharara, thank you so much. We have a lot more to discuss about this, and I'm glad you're on board now. We'll have you on a lot to talk about it. Thank you so much.
Jake.
A new response